I'm Hannah Cooper, 33 years old. I used to believe I was the only child my father truly trusted. But that night, while I was in an online meeting, I received a reservation confirmation email for my father's birthday dinner. In the attached photo, my entire family was raising their glasses at a luxury restaurant, and I hadn't even been invited. The reservation had been made under my sister Riley's name, and sitting next to her was a strange man who looked every bit like a lawyer. I wasn't at my own father's birthday celebration. And what came after was even worse. Have you ever felt erased from your own family right before your eyes? Leave a comment if you've ever been hurt by the very people you love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel, because the story I'm about to tell will make you question everything you've ever called family. I called my mother right after seeing the photo. The phone rang twice and then cut off. No voicemail. No reply text. I tried calling my dad. He picked up, his voice low and rough, like he was trying to hide the trace of wine. You already know, honey, these kinds of things are just casual. Just a few people stopping by to say happy birthday. I didn't say anything. It wasn't what he said that hurt me, it was how he said it. So casually. As if my absence was expected. As if I hadn't been the one who stayed up every night beside his hospital bed 4 years ago, while Mom was on vacation with friends and Riley was live streaming wine parties from Miami. I hung up in silence, but the anger in my chest wouldn't fade. I opened my personal inbox, scrolled past dozens of work emails until my eyes froze on a cold subject line. Notice of will adjustment, Carter Bloom, attorneys at law. I clicked it open. The letter was written in standard legal language. Cold, direct, and leaving no room for interpretation. According to the contents, my father, Edward Cooper, had requested changes to his will, specifically removing the inheritance rights of an individual no longer involved in family life. Below that line, my name was struck out. No footnotes, no explanation. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I sat frozen in my apartment, feeling like I'd just been erased from my own bloodline. The name Hannah Cooper, the same name I'd written on my father's hospital intake forms, the name tied to every night I pushed his wheelchair around the rehab garden, was now nothing more than a crossed-out line by his own hand. Even more shocking was the name that had been added to the priority list. Riley Cooper, the youngest daughter, now serving as the family's media advisor. I let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Riley, the one who turned my father's name into emotional bait for viral TikTok videos, spinning his illness into a sharing is love campaign, all while barely sending him a single text. I pulled my laptop closer, reopened the folder titled 2019 Stroke Recovery, where I had kept every photo, journal, and medical invoice from when I cared for Dad. There was even a video of his first physical therapy session, when he lifted his left hand off the bed for the first time. He cried, and I sat on the hospital floor holding his hand, whispering, "It's okay. I'm here." Looking back, I'm not sure what hurt more, being removed from the will or realizing that everything I did was dismissed. My phone lit up with a message from Tessa. "You okay?" I didn't reply. I just sent her the restaurant photo and the PDF of the letter. Less than 5 minutes later, Tessa called. "This isn't minor, Hannah," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "I'll look into Carter Bloom. That's not the firm your dad usually worked with." "No. He always used McKinney Doyle." There was a pause. Then she said, "I think Riley's behind this. Look at who signed the paperwork. Daniel Morse. He was investigated last year for shady asset transfers during a divorce case in Texas." I felt a chill crawl up my arms. "You mean, they're trying to legitimize something?" "Exactly. And if they're using the phrase, no longer involved in family life, they're building a legal case that you've distanced yourself, so they can cut you out." I remembered the countless times I'd been left out of family gatherings. Mom would say I was too busy. Riley would text, "Oh, you still make time for the family?" They didn't just forget me. They were removing me systematically, piece by piece. I opened my phone camera and looked into my own eyes. Something there had shifted. It wasn't pain. It was cold, quiet clarity. I pulled out the locked metal box in my closet, the one where I kept old contracts and recordings. Inside were voice memos from calls with Riley, including one where she pleaded with me not to tell Dad about the credit card debt from that year. I played one. Riley's voice from 2021 echoed back, "Don't blow this up, okay? I borrowed the money for an investment. I'll pay it back." If Dad finds out, he'll lose it. Back then I believed her. I thought staying silent would keep the peace. Now I saw it clearly: silence helps no one. Silence is the trap. I glanced at the photo on my desk. Me and Dad sitting on the old wooden bench at the rehab center, his hand resting on mine. I had once been his whole world. So what made him forget that? Or who made him forget? I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Family Fraud Evidence 01. I was going to find answers. And when I had them, none of them would dare erase me again. I sat in my quiet apartment the whole evening, ceiling fan humming above, the coffee pot long empty. I reread every old message between me and Tessa, my best friend from college, now a young attorney working in New York. She was the first person I told, and the only one who didn't accuse me of overreacting. "You need to find out who that man next to Riley is," Tessa had texted, her voice tense over the phone. "He's not there for the wine. If he's a lawyer, chances are this is legal groundwork." I sent Tessa the photo from the email confirmation. The man wore a navy suit, no tie, white shirt, slicked back hair, holding a wine glass, eyes fixed on Riley like he was waiting for a cue. I'd met people like him in the creative industry. People who never show up unless there's a reason. I reached out to Mason, an old friend from the indie gaming world. He had once helped me clean spyware off my company's servers. He was a true white-hat hacker. Brilliant, discreet, and only helped when he believed the cause was just. After I sent him the photo and a few basic details, he replied with just 3 words: "I'll take a look." 2 hours later, I received a reply. A PDF attached and a simple message. "His name is Daniel Morse. Bio attached. Be careful, this guy's no amateur." I opened the file. Daniel Morse. 42 years old. Harvard Law graduate. Formerly employed at 2 prestigious law firms, but had gone independent 3 years prior. His specialty: intra-family asset restructuring, a polite term for coerced asset transfers, altered wills, and inheritance disputes swept under the rug. I scrolled to the bottom of the page. The past clients section was filled with names blurred out. I knew that type. When a lawyer operated on the edge between legality and ethics, everything came wrapped in a polished veneer. I returned to my old hard drive, the one where I had stored every log of my father's care, every small detail from the year he had a stroke. At that time, I had purchased a small apartment in West Seattle, using my own savings for the down payment. My father, still legally sound back then, had signed on as a co-owner because he wanted me to have something to stand on. I located the original contract. His signature, my signature, even the notary seal were all there. But something strange happened. When I logged into the city's personal property management system to double-check, the apartment was now under the name Riley Cooper. A chill ran down my spine. That couldn't be right. I had never sold it, never gifted it, never signed any power of attorney. I printed out all the old documents and compared them to the official system records. Everything matched perfectly: the signatures, the notary license number. But I knew one thing for sure: I never signed any transfer papers. I called Tessa immediately. "The apartment is now listed under Riley's name," I said, my voice rough. Tessa paused. "They may have used a forged power of attorney. Or worse, they might have a scanned copy of your signature." I still have my dad's old handwriting journal from rehab. He used to say he was scared he wouldn't be able to write properly again. What if? You're thinking it's a forged signature? Not just forged, fabricated systematically. Planned. Riley knows exactly how tech can create fake evidence. She gave a TEDx talk last year about deepfake and facial recognition. I was there with her. Tessa took a deep breath on the other end. "Hannah, this is bigger than I thought." I turned on the light and began digging through the backup folders on my hard drive. There was a video file from 2020, one I'd taken of my dad sitting in his hospital bed, talking about how, "The new apartment is a gift I want to leave to you because you never left me when I needed you most." I scrubbed through the footage slowly, eyes locked on his expression. Everything about it was heartbreakingly real. I whispered to myself, "And now he's signed the paperwork cutting me out of the will?" Something didn't add up. Too many pieces didn't align. A property transferred without my consent. A lawyer who specialized in disputed inheritances. A sister with both the tech skills and the media reach to manufacture an alternate version of the truth. I opened a new Word document and titled it, "Timeline, Hannah Cooper asset activity. I needed to trace every step they took. More importantly, I needed answers. Not just for me but for my father, for the truth they were trying to erase from all our memories. I made an appointment at the Martin Fields notary office for Wednesday afternoon, right after I printed all my records from the hard drive. That was the place that had supposedly authenticated the apartment transfer 4 years ago. The same place where my name appeared on documents I had never even touched. The receptionist, Gloria, looked to be in her early 50s with neatly tied platinum hair. She greeted me with a polite smile. "Miss Cooper, I've reviewed the file you requested." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "I'd like to see the signature archive. And if possible, any identity verification data linked to the signing session." She opened a slim folder on the desk and placed it gently in front of me. "This is a copy of the 2020 transfer contract. Signed by Mr. Edward Cooper, Riley Cooper and you." I sat up straighter. I never signed any paperwork transferring that apartment. Gloria didn't look surprised. She quietly pulled a small USB from a drawer and plugged it into a monitor in the corner. A video started playing. There I was, my face, my voice, my posture, sitting across from the notary, smiling faintly, nodding as he asked, "Hannah Cooper, do you agree to this property transfer?" My voice responded, "Yes, I agree. This is my voluntary decision." I went numb. Not because of what I saw, but because I knew without a doubt, that wasn't me. I had never worn that purple dress. Never owned those earrings. And more importantly, I had never set foot in that office that entire year. When I told Gloria that, her brow furrowed. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I wasn't even in the city at the time. I was caring for my father at Mercy Care Rehabilitation Center in North Seattle. I have clock-in records and nursing logs to prove it." Gloria looked uneasy. She stood up and called someone from the back. A broad man with gray beard and a white dress shirt stepped out. "I'm Mr. Fields," he said. "I was the one who notarized that signing. I remember it clearly." I looked straight into his eyes. "Then you remember seeing me sign that document in person, don't you?" Fields nodded slowly. "You were there. Your voice, your face. Dual verification was completed through our system. That's why I notarized it. I'm sorry if there's been any mistake." I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my photos and showed him an image taken at Mercy Care the exact day on the notary's file. I was wearing scrubs, my name badge clearly visible, feeding my dad soup. "I couldn't have been in 2 places at once, Mr. Fields." The room fell silent. Gloria glanced at Mr. Fields, then whispered, "Daniel Morse personally submitted the appointment paperwork. He said everything had already been verified with the family." I took a slow breath. "And who exactly is Mr. Morse to you?" "He's Riley Cooper's legal representative, Mr. Fields answered. "I've worked with him on several estate planning cases before." I emphasized every word. "Riley Cooper is my sister. She has a background in facial recognition and virtual modeling tech. I believe that video is not authentic. It's a deep fake." Gloria didn't blink. "You're saying the entire signing was fake?" "I'm not guessing," I said, staring at the screen. "I know. I sent all the data to Tessa as soon as I left the office." That night she called back, her voice tight. "I've reviewed the video thoroughly. Seamless, Hannah. Nearly impossible to detect unless we can compare it to a genuine baseline sample. So, is there any way to prove it's fake? I can reach out to a digital forensic expert. But we'll need more evidence. Possibly metadata from the original file. Or security camera footage from the building that day. If we can prove you weren't physically there, we can unravel this." I remembered something. "That building uses keycard access, right?" "Definitely. Call the building manager. If they still have the entry logs, this whole thing could flip." I hung up, my heart trembling, not from fear but because for the first time I saw a path ahead, narrow, jagged, but a path toward the truth. I called the management office of Martin Tower the next morning. A woman named Melissa answered, her voice friendly. I introduced myself and requested access logs for May 14, 2020, between 9 and 11 a.m. "I need to verify whether the keycard registered to Hannah Cooper was used to enter the building during that time," I explained, trying to keep my voice calm. Melissa checked for a few minutes and then replied, I'm sorry, but there's no entry record under your name or keycard during that time frame. I gripped the phone tightly. What about the keycard under the name Riley Cooper? Yes. One entry at 8:57 a.m. She was accompanied by an unregistered guest. Our lobby camera shows a male, but there's no recorded name. I closed my eyes. That confirmed it. Riley had been there. I hadn't. I texted Tessa immediately, "We've got the door log." I was never in that building that day. Tessa replied with just one sentence, "It's starting." I replayed the deepfake video again, staring at a familiar face saying words I never said. There was something cold about that experience, not betrayal anymore. It was the feeling of being erased from your own self. I whispered into the quiet of my apartment, "If they can fake me, I'll show them what the real truth looks like." I returned to the old house on a rainy Saturday morning. Mom and Riley had posted check-in photos from a resort in Carmel by the sea the night before. I knew I had less than 48 hours before they came back, and I wasn't going to waste a second. The old key was still in the glove compartment of my car. I had never returned it. Even though I hadn't stepped inside in months, the house still smelled of oak and carried the heavy silence of nights after arguments. I walked down the hallway toward Dad's study, heart tightening as if something was waiting. The room was still locked as usual. I pulled a small hairpin from my purse and fiddled with the old lock for a few minutes. A soft click broke the stillness. I pushed the door open. This space had never welcomed me. But I wasn't there to be welcomed. I was there to reclaim what was mine. Dad's desk was still neatly arranged, papers stacked with his old habits. I opened the left drawer, where he used to keep handwritten drafts and personal notes. Tucked between yellowed papers was a folded packet. In faded blue ink were the familiar words, "Will draft, unnotarized." I read each line slowly, my heartbeat pounding. In the asset allocation section, my name was clearly written, accompanied by a handwritten note in hurried script. "The Cooper family property belongs to Hannah. Riley is not permitted to use the Cooper name for commercial or public image purposes." I couldn't hold back the emotion. For 4 years I had thought I'd been forgotten. But Dad had once thought of me, had tried to protect me from exactly what was happening now. I turned to the following pages and found more private notes. About his health, about wanting to leave the art studio to me because Hannah understands the value of silence. That line made my throat tighten. I moved to the right-hand file cabinet. In the bottom drawer was a small metal box with a 3-digit code. I guessed my birth date. It opened. Inside was a black external hard drive with a handwritten label. "Temporary storage, cameras floor 1, 2, 3. Do not delete." I plugged it into the laptop I brought. A folder opened with hundreds of video clips sorted by date. I chose one from over 2 years ago, marked with a red star. The frame opened to the living room. Dad sat in a chair, his right hand still clenched from the stroke. Riley stood beside him, holding a stack of papers. In the video, Dad didn't speak, just tried to move his lips. Riley held his hand and pressed it onto each page. I paused the video at the moment Dad slightly turned his head away, his expression clearly saying no. But Riley leaned down, kept writing, and smiled at the camera. Smiled. I didn't recognize the woman in that video as my sister. I played another video from 10 days later. This time inside Dad's office. Riley stood next to a man, wearing a long coat, his face not visible but his voice deep and steady. "Early transfer will make things smoother. Cooper won't remember. Once he signs, we'll handle the rest." Dad didn't respond. Riley answered for him. "He's already agreed. We'll transfer the money from the main account to the holding fund." I navigated to the finance section in the hard drive. A spreadsheet titled August Transactions, Holding Fund. The first entry was a $150,000 transfer to an account labeled Blue Crescent Holdings LLC. The note read, "Disbursed per DM's request." DM was Daniel Morse. I opened my phone and took screenshots of every video frame, every document line. My heart no longer raced. The pain had transformed into something sharper, cold and clear, slicing through every doubt I'd ever had. My father had been deceived. Maybe he had suspected. Maybe he'd tried to tell me but couldn't. But now he would know. I gathered the will draft, the printed transaction logs, and the hard drive, and packed them all into my backpack. Before leaving the room, I turned to look at the old photo frame on the desk. Me and Dad under the oak tree in the backyard, smiling so genuinely it made my chest ache. I placed my hand on the glass. I won't let this disappear, Dad. Not again. Outside the rain was still falling. But inside me, everything was as clear as a midday sun. There was only one way forward now, the truth. And I had every piece needed to bring it back together. I had just gotten home when my phone rang. Seeing Mom's name on the screen, I hesitated for a moment before answering. Her voice, once familiar, no longer held warmth. It was cold, clipped, sharp like a blade. Hannah, you're going too far. No greeting. No concern. So because I'm finding the truth, I'm the one in the wrong? It's not about wrong. It's about you ruining everything, she snapped. You have a job, a career. You don't need to dig up the past or drag the family into this. I paused for a few seconds, then asked directly, whose side are you on? A long silence followed, long enough that I could hear the wind brushing against my apartment window. Hannah, I just want things to stay peaceful, she finally replied, her voice quieter now but still void of any regret. Peaceful by erasing me from this family? I didn't say that. But your actions did. You knew what Riley was doing, didn't you? This time she didn't answer. The call ended with a sigh, and the flat, hollow sound of the line disconnecting. The next morning, a package arrived at my door. Inside was an envelope stamped in red from a law firm. I opened it. The first line read, Official Notice. Unauthorized entry, data collection and use of private materials at the residence of Mr. Edward Cooper is subject to prosecution under Washington state law. I read every word, gripping the letter so tightly my fingertips turned white. The signature at the bottom, Daniel Morse. It wasn't just a warning. They threatened to sue me for unlawful entry, privacy violations, and causing financial damages that cannot be accurately assessed. As soon as I finished reading, I snapped a photo of the letter and sent it to Tessa. She called me back in under 5 minutes. They're trying to pressure you, she said, not even bothering to hide her frustration. They know you've got the evidence. The only way they can stop you now is to scare you into backing down. They think I'm afraid. You have the legal right to access your father's former assets, especially with proof showing you were a co-owner and designated heir. And if everything you've gathered is authentic, we're holding the stronger hand. I sat silently in the kitchen, the letter still wrinkled in my hand. Suddenly, all the memories I had forced down for years came flooding back. I remembered how my mom always kept her distance when Riley was around. Those evenings when I cooked dinner in the kitchen while she sat in the living room laughing with Riley on video calls, like I was the hired help, not her daughter. The times I brought up unfairness and she would always say, "Don't be so sensitive, Hannah. Family means learning to give way." I used to believe that staying silent was the way to keep peace. But now I know, silence is the reason I was erased from my own family. Tessa spoke after a long pause. Have you thought about going public? I looked up. You mean taking this to the public? Yes. We're living in a time where media can reveal what courtrooms sometimes bury. If they're writing their version of the story, then it's time you tell the truth. I glanced over at the laptop on the table. The external hard drive still sat there. The draft of the will, the surveillance videos, the footage of Riley forcing Dad's hand, everything was intact. But I don't want to shame my father, I said slowly. No matter what, he's still someone I love. No one's asking you to attack him. But you need to protect yourself. And if what you said is true, that he didn't know most of what happened, then maybe he needs this truth just as much as you do so he can finally see who was really on his side. I folded the letter and placed it carefully into the file. Then I walked to my desk and reopened the video of Riley pressing my father's near-paralyzed hand onto the paperwork. I looked closely at Riley's face. Her eyes stared directly at the camera, lips pressed into a hard, straight line. No hesitation. No sign of humanity in that moment. I opened a new file on my computer and titled it, The Truth, Unedited. Then I began dragging in each clip, each screenshot, each document file. With every piece I added, I felt like I was shattering another wall they had spent years building around me. I didn't know how the media would react. I didn't know what my mother would do next. But I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. Outside the window, the rain had stopped. The oak tree in the front yard shimmered in soft sunlight filtering through the leaves. I still had a lot to face. But at least I wasn't walking in the dark anymore. I decided to host a live stream on Friday evening at 8 o'clock from my small apartment. The lighting was soft and even, the background was a simple white wall. I didn't want this to become a spectacle. I just wanted the truth to be seen. Tessa sat across from me checking the stream and preview clips. Only people with a private link can access it, she confirmed. The list includes 5 journalists, 2 independent attorneys, 3 friends from the tech industry, and 1 representative from a non-profit legal oversight group. I nodded. We don't need a crowd. Just the right people. We started at 8:15. I opened with the calmest voice I could manage. I'm Hannah Cooper. If you're watching this video, it means you've been chosen to hear what's really happening inside a family that looks perfectly normal on the outside. I'm not telling this story to gain sympathy. I'm telling it because I can't stay silent anymore. Then I played the clips. First was the deepfake video. My face, my voice in the falsified notarization footage. The gestures were smooth, nearly indistinguishable unless cross-referenced. I let them watch 1 full minute before switching to the next video. Riley forcing my dad's clenched hand to sign the documents. No narration. I wanted the images to speak for themselves. Next came the scan of the unpublished draft of the will, in my father's handwriting with the note, "Assets belong to Hannah. Riley is not permitted to use the Cooper name for commercial purposes." When the screen returned to my face, I lifted my gaze and looked straight into the camera. I was erased from my family through a series of calculated deceptions. And if I didn't have this evidence, I might still believe I had imagined it all. But I didn't. This is real. And I'm no longer afraid to speak it. The live stream ended in silence. No applause. No tears. Just a cold current down my spine. I turned off the screen. Tessa sat still, her hands clasped. You know this isn't the end, right? I nodded. I don't need it to end. I just need it to keep going in the right direction. Less than 6 hours later, the clip was leaked. I didn't know who did it and I didn't blame anyone. Maybe it was one of the journalists. Maybe someone in the tech circle found the hidden link. But the spread was irreversible. The hashtag Justice for Hannah started popping up on Twitter. Then Instagram. Then Reddit. Comment after comment poured in. People sharing their own stories, similar cases, others disinherited, others targeted by deepfakes. My phone barely stopped vibrating. Messages from old friends, strangers, coworkers. Some congratulating me. Some offering legal assistance. One person wrote, "I used to think this stuff only happened in movies. But you've shown me something different." That night, close to midnight, my phone lit up with a new message. It was from my father. "I'm watching. Can we talk?" Just 6 words, but they made me sit down on the edge of my bed, clutching the phone until my fingers went numb. I replied, "Anytime." He responded almost instantly, "Tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. Same bench on the porch." I drove to the care facility half an hour early. The morning air was damp and cool, dew still clinging to the wooden bench under the porch roof. I saw him already sitting there, wearing a gray sweater, eyes fixed on the small garden that had just started to turn gold with early autumn. I walked toward him slowly. He turned to look at me, and the coldness I'd seen in his eyes the last time was gone. "You came," he said, his voice light as the wind. I sat beside him, not touching, not speaking. There was no need to rush. After a while, he adjusted his glasses. I watched all of it. Every part. I never imagined it had gone that far. "You didn't know?" "I knew. Some of it. I suspected. But when you didn't say anything and Riley kept telling me you were busy, that you were angry, that you didn't want anything to do with me, I started to believe the thing I feared most, that I had lost you." I swallowed hard. "I was always there. When you were in the hospital. When no one else asked if you'd eaten. I was there. You just didn't see me." He nodded. "I see you now. And I'm sorry." A breeze passed by, carrying the familiar scent of damp leaves. "Riley." "Mom." I hesitated. "I'm not ready to talk to them yet," Dad said. "I need to understand myself first. I need to understand why I let it all happen without doing anything." I leaned back in my chair, gazing up at the sky just starting to clear after the night's rain. "I don't need you to take sides against them," I whispered. I just need you to stand with the truth. He took my hand. I stand with you. And if that's where the truth is, then I've chosen right. I didn't respond. I just held his hand back. A hand aged and rough but still warm. I returned to the nursing home on a gray morning, Seattle still wrapped in a light mist and damp cold clinging to my sleeves. The glass door opened and the familiar smell of antiseptic rushed in, carrying a quiet stillness I couldn't name. Dad was sitting in the community room, his armchair facing the window, where a pot of purple geraniums had just been freshly potted. He was wearing the soft gray cardigan I had bought him last winter. His face looked thinner, hair more silver, but the way his eyes lit up when he saw me, it was like a small candle flickering in cold wind. I stepped closer. He struggled to rise, raising one arm to hug me. It was slow, brief, but enough to catch my breath in my throat. "I know everything, Hannah," he said softly, his lips trembling as if holding himself together. "I've been watching from the moment you started speaking up. I thought I was ready, but watching it scared me." I sat beside him, taking his thin hand, feeling the bones beneath the skin, holding on to the man who had once been the strongest part of my world. "What were you afraid of?" I asked. "That if I admitted Riley was wrong, if I admitted your mother had covered for her, I'd lose the only daughter I had left. I'd lose what little family I still had." I said nothing. No one should have to choose between truth and family. But I understood him. I had once stayed silent out of the same fear. "I don't blame you for being afraid," I said quietly. "I just hurt because you let that fear cost me what should have been mine. Not money, but my place, my voice, my existence." Dad nodded slowly. His eyes welled with tears, but he didn't wipe them. "I let them speak for me. I let your mother take control because I thought she was stronger. And I thought you were tough, that you didn't need anyone on your side. I became tough because no one ever stood beside me, Dad." After a moment, he reached over to the table and picked up a small folder. Its cover was dark blue, the papers inside thin but carefully clipped together. He handed it to me. "This will was notarized over a year ago, right after my second stroke. By then I knew Riley had transferred assets behind my back. I wanted to correct it. I did. But your mother held it back. Said it wasn't the right time." I opened the folder and flipped through each page. Everything was clearly outlined. The main house, the backyard studio, the savings fund Dad wanted me to manage for charitable work. Riley's name wasn't on any of the assets tied to usage rights. Just a one-time support payment, conditional on not using the Cooper name for commercial purposes. I stopped at a handwritten note, the script shaky but unmistakably his. "Hannah understands the real value of what money can't buy. She doesn't need to win, but I want her protected." I looked up, my voice catching. "Why didn't you give this to me sooner?" I got weaker. I hesitated. I thought I had time to fix things myself. But I let time slip away, just like I let too many things slip out of my hands before. "So what do you want me to do now?" He looked at me with no hesitation in his eyes. "Do what's right. You don't have to forgive. But justice matters. They may call you a traitor, say you exposed family business. But I know, if you don't speak up, no one else will." I looked out the window. The morning sun was starting to melt the dew on the leaves. Everything was changing quietly. "I never wanted to expose anyone," I said. "But I can't keep swallowing what they've twisted. I've lived too long inside their distorted story. It's time to tear it down." "Are you afraid?" he asked. I gave a faint smile. "Yes. But I'm more afraid of being a ghost in my own family's story forever." Dad nodded, slow and deep. "Then keep going, Hannah. Do what you believe is right. I'm here. Not as a wall. But at least, as a coat hook for you to hang your fear." I squeezed his hand, feeling a little lighter. Not because I had one. But because, finally, someone in my family saw me for who I really was. Not the quiet, emotionless daughter they always labeled me. But a daughter who felt pain, endured it, and now finally stood tall. The light streaming through the window fell softly across the wrinkles on his hand, like a silent gesture of comfort. I knew I still had much to face. But right here in this moment, I had something I hadn't had in years. A wordless acknowledgement from the person I once believed had turned away. On the day of the court hearing, the sky over Seattle hung heavy with low clouds, the weight of it pressing on my chest. District Court 8 wasn't unfamiliar with messy inheritance cases, but few came with the digital evidence this case carried. Tessa wore a pale gray suit, her hair in a neat bun, walking steadily beside me. She squeezed my hand before we entered the courtroom. "You don't need to be strong. Just be yourself." I nodded. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here to reclaim what had been twisted. Riley walked in after, accompanied by my mother. She wore a cream-colored dress, light makeup, a smile she tried to keep composed, though her eyes betrayed unease. My mother followed behind, her gaze avoiding mine entirely. Daniel Morse arrived several minutes late. He entered with his usual confidence, black leather briefcase in hand, scanning the room like assessing a battlefield. But he didn't stay long. A court clerk delivered a large envelope containing a formal notice. Motion to withdraw as legal representative in this proceeding, citing internal conflict. Judge Foster, a gray-haired man known for fairness and not easily swayed by emotion, glanced at the form, then turned to Riley. "Riley Cooper, you've been informed that withdrawing counsel mid-hearing may put you at a disadvantage, correct?" Riley nodded, her voice barely audible. "I understand." I sat still, watching the scene like a stranger observing my life being ripped open under a spotlight. Tessa began her statement. She spoke without rushing, without pressure, just laying out the evidence piece by piece like fitting puzzle pieces into their rightful place. The deepfake video of the notarization, the footage of Riley forcing my dad's hand, the hidden will draft, the new notarized version, the building access logs, the financial transaction records. The air in the courtroom seemed to drop a degree with each video. I heard murmurs from the gallery. A journalist scribbled non-stop. A member of the Legal Oversight Committee sat in the front row, face unreadable, but eyes fixed on every word Tessa spoke. Riley tried to push back, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and a targeted effort to ruin her reputation. But when the judge specifically asked about the deepfake video, she fell silent. "You deny having any involvement in creating falsified content?" "No. I'm not denying it. I didn't think it would go this far." I looked straight at my sister in that moment. Riley's eyes lost their arrogance. She looked away. My mother said nothing throughout the entire hearing. She sat with her hands clasped, eyes fixed on her own fingers as if none of it had anything to do with her. Midway through the session, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. I turned, my chest tightening as I saw my father being wheeled in. He wore a light blue shirt, a thin scarf draped around his neck, his face older than I remembered, but his eyes steady and clear. The courtroom fell completely silent. He was brought to the witness stand. He asked for permission to speak, even if only briefly. The judge nodded. An assistant adjusted the microphone for him. "My name is Edward Cooper," he said, his voice weak but unmistakably clear. "I authored both versions of the will presented today. I confirm. The first one was made when I had not fully recovered my mental capacity. The second was created when I was clear-headed enough to recognize who was truly still by my side." He turned to look at me. "I never denied my daughter, Hannah, anything. I just let fear and silence speak in my place. Today I'm here to correct that." I bit my lip to hold back the tears. There was nothing left to say. That afternoon, after a short deliberation, Judge Foster delivered the verdict. "This court finds credible evidence of fraud in the form of falsified video, forged signatures, unlawful asset transfers, and the concealment of an official will. The will dated June 5, 2020, is hereby nullified. Assets are to be reinstated according to the notarized version dated December 15, 2021. Furthermore, the court approves the transfer of this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into acts of forgery and unlawful financial gain." I sat in silence as the ruling was read aloud. I didn't feel relief. There was no applause. Just a stillness as deep as a lake after a storm. But I knew that stillness was the first sound of justice. Riley buried her face in her hands. My mother remained motionless. Daniel Morse had left the courthouse long ago. I looked at my father. He gave me a quiet nod. He didn't speak, but his eyes held something far more peaceful than I'd seen in months. The apartment I rented in Bellevue had a large window overlooking a row of old pine trees. Every morning, sunlight would pour through the branches into the living room, as if this place had never known pain. My father was moved here 2 weeks after the trial. He didn't talk much about what had happened, didn't mention my mother or Riley. But I could tell something inside him had closed, and something else had begun. We spent most of our days together. I worked from home while he sat by the wooden table near the window, sketching scenes from memory. The old lake, the oak tree by the porch, the patch of patio where I once used chalk to draw on bricks. His right hand still trembled slightly, but every stroke was deliberate, patient, and sure. One afternoon, I brewed 2 cups of ginger tea, set them down, and pulled my chair closer. Dad was coloring a nearly finished piece. A lakeside scene, the water a deep turquoise, the sky a soft shade of lavender. I remember this place, I said quietly. Every weekend you'd take me fishing. I never caught a thing, but you always told me I was the best. He set the pencil down. You were the best. Not because you caught fish, but because you were patient enough to sit there quietly, waiting, never complaining. I gave a faint laugh. Dad, have you ever wondered, what would have happened if I never spoke up? I have. And what hurts me the most isn't what you did. It's that I let it all go on for so long. I'm sorry for letting you be alone for too long, Hannah. I placed my hand on the back of his. I'm not alone anymore. I have myself. We sat there, no longer needing to explain anything. Silence now wasn't emptiness. It was presence. My mother and Riley had cut off contact completely after the ruling. I didn't blame them. That silence, in its own way, was a kind of admission. Riley tried to salvage her public image by launching a YouTube channel called My Truth. The videos were carefully worded, painting her as a misunderstood victim trying to rewrite the narrative. But the response wasn't what she expected. Most viewers weren't swayed by a story with no evidence. One comment under her video with the most likes read, "The truth doesn't need a script." One Monday morning, as I was checking emails like usual, a strange subject line caught my eye. "You've been selected to speak at TEDx. Topic: Deepfake and Family Justice." I read it 3 times. The message was short, sincere. They'd heard about my story through independent reports and wanted me to share. Not to vent, but to open a conversation about technology, truth, and how people confront invisible wounds inside homes that are supposed to be safe. I sat for a long time staring at the screen. In my mind, I saw the version of myself from months ago. Lost, angry, hurt, and somewhere deep down, hopeless. I had come a long way. Not to win, but to stand upright again. I hovered my cursor over the confirmation button. My hand paused for a second. Then I clicked. Not to accuse anyone, but to speak to people like me. Those who were written out of their family stories simply for refusing to play the roles others assign them. To let them know, you're not wrong. And you're not alone. The soft sound of pencil on paper broke through my thoughts. My father was still drawing. This time, the figure was a girl sitting by the lake, long hair, holding a fishing rod, the water reflecting the light like polished stone. I stared at the drawing, then turned and asked, "What are you going to call it?" Without looking up, he answered gently, "The girl who didn't disappear." What would you do if one day you woke up and realized your entire family had rewritten your story without you in it? I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because I believe there are so many people out there still living in silence. People trapped in families full of conditions, where love often comes with manipulation and exclusion. If you've ever felt pushed to the edges, forced to stay quiet for fear of losing the people you love, or stood up through pain just to protect the truth, I want you to know, you weren't wrong. And you're not alone. I'm learning how to rebuild a family, not through blood but through choice. With my father. With myself. With anyone ready to live honestly. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt forgotten, misunderstood, or pushed out of the home you thought was yours? I want to hear your story. Maybe somewhere in those unhealed places we'll find each other. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to follow this channel. We'll keep walking together through the raw, untold layers of life, through what it means to reclaim your worth inside the relationships that once tried to erase it.